Welcome to the Pindown, your Detroit Pistons podcast. I'm your host, Wes Davenport from Motor City Hoops and Detroit Bad Boys.
And I'm Blake Silverman, writer for Detroit Bad Boys, covering everything Pistons, and news writer for Sports Illustrated.
And guys, if you are tuning in live, first, appreciate you guys. As always, feel free to throw in some questions or reactions actually into the live chat here. What we're going to be doing in this show is kind of like a mock off-season with some constraints, but we'll get into that. We're recording here the morning after the San Antonio Spurs locked up a bid into the NBA Finals. So just a really quick, Blake, how about that game? How about that series, right? I mean, that was cinema. That was amazing basketball all the way through.
Great series. I hope it's the first of many between those two. I'm happy that the Pistons aren't in the Western Conference. But yeah, I mean, it was an impressive win from San Antonio. Like Victor Wembanyama had his moments, but overall not the best offensive night from him. But he was really able to steady the ship and lock down defensively in the second half, especially as he dealt with foul trouble. So I'm excited for this finals series. I think when it was shaping up, I thought Knicks Spurs would be the best matchup. So I'm excited to see how that shakes out. I mean, I think San Antonio still has to be the heavy favorite, no matter how much the Knicks are rolling right now. But it'll be interesting to see how they try to deal with Wemby like Oklahoma City tried to.
Yeah, it's going to be fascinating to watch. I mean, you think maybe OG Anunoby takes the first crack at it? You can make an argument for Josh Hart too, just to try to really get underneath him. But yeah, I mean, so I'm not a Pistons fan that hates the Knicks. The Knicks actually have quite a few players I enjoy watching. It's a fun rivalry, Pistons-Knicks, because of last year's playoffs, but I don't despise them. I just I can't really see them stealing more than a game here. I know how well they've been playing, but the Spurs, man, they went through a gauntlet to get here to where they're at today, and they just took down the Thunder pretty convincingly these past couple of games. Their role players are playing incredible. Dylan Harper had what a game 7 for the rookie. That's a really, really good team. Really good team. I struggle to see how the Knicks might steal more than a game or two.
I'm with you. I mean, what's interesting is we've seen a bunch of series go to 7 games, which has been awesome. And I mean, Oklahoma City swept the Lakers and then came out flat against the Spurs, who went 6 with the Wolves. But then in the East, like, the Knicks had 2 sweeps in a row, and against the Cavs, they did not come out flat. Cleveland did open up that huge lead in game 1 that they blew, but it'll be interesting to see like the long layoff for the Knicks against the Spurs, who just went 7 games. I mean, they did have some injuries that have all cleared up now, but yeah, I'm thinking San Antonio's like cruising, and that won't really be. I hope it leads to a good game 1, but I'm with my prediction is Spurs in 6.
And before we move on, just I love how much making the finals even mattered to Wemby. That was really cool to see. The tears in his eyes. He's so emotional. He's going over, hugging all of his guys, and you looked like that was almost a championship celebration. The way that all of those guys were going there just to make the finals, and I think that's such a good thing. I love it. I mean, that's how much we as fans care, right? So to see the athletes at that same level, not only the athletes, but like Victor Wembanyama, the best player on the team, the face, honestly, kind of the face of the league, or moving that way right now, to care that much. It's really, really cool to see. So that was great. You got a reaction before we move on?
Yeah, and like, I mean, just the parity, like, other than, let's say, I think the Celtics, no team has made the finals twice in the past like 6 years. So it's been awesome to see. I'm excited to see a new champion. And I mean, yeah, Wemby has been incredible ever since he stepped in the league, and just seeing what a young star like that can do. I mean, obviously he's a 7'4" freak of nature, but it's cool to see him get to that stage this early. And I mean, for me, and a good transition into the Pistons, but not trying to make it that way. It makes me a little like, I think Cade Cunningham could be that guy too. Maybe not. Obviously Cade is further along in his career already, but yeah, I think some of these young guys really have what it takes to get to the next level. And as beatable as teams like the Thunder and now the Spurs look, like, you never know what can happen. So it makes me a little optimistic for the future, at least.
Yeah, that's all I was going to add on, right? I mean, talking about the parity, not everyone, but I see some that are all worried, like, oh, okay, hey, now this is Victor Wembanyama's league. And hey, it might be, but also last year when the Thunder were crowned champions, everyone kind of thought that was an impending dynasty with all the assets they have. And hey, look, I mean, lo and behold, they don't make it to the finals the next year. They're still a fantastic team, obviously, right? They made it to the conference finals, Game 7, all that good stuff. But it's certainly no longer like just the Thunder's league right now. Stake their claim. But let's talk about that other 60-win team, our Detroit Pistons. So I mentioned that we're going to be doing kind of a mock off season, but with constraints. So we wanted to open up this show kind of doing a how fun could we make a boring offseason for Detroit? So the kind of parameters we're working with, we're going to make sure that we extend Jalen Duren and Asar Thompson because Trajan Langdon said that is what is going to happen. So we're going to make that happen for our mock off seasons as well. We're going to try to get back Tobias Harris on a reasonable deal, but not like a vet minimum or something, because that's not realistic. So those three things alone are fairly constraining for what you can do as the Detroit Pistons. So without making a big deal, without making a massive swing and consolidating a bunch of guys to go and get a fourth star player, we tried to operate individual offseason plans legally, right? So within the cap rules as we best understand them, to try to at least make the team interesting or improved in some capacity next season. So Blake, are there any constraints here that I missed? I'm trying to make sure I set the table well.
We'll talk about this when we do it, but with the draft pick, I think what we each did was we brought in that draft pick, like signed them, didn't trade it. But we're not going to get super in depth into like who that player could be, because we'll save that until closer to the draft.
Yeah, we're going to have our own legit draft show. We'll probably get a guest on, talk about all the options that could be there for the Pistons. But for this, you're right. We're just saying, all right, they're going to pick at 21 and we're going to leave it at that. And we're going to say that they're picking at 21 because, again, we're not making any big trades or big swing deals or anything like that. So they're going to keep that pick, right? All this is to say, Blake, let's start with your plan. Open it up how you will. What did you do what do you want to, is this like a budget plan for you? Is it boring? What are you naming your off-season plan here?
So I'd say it's a little in the middle between it. I'd say it's mostly boring just because there's not that swing move, but I think within the constraints we're setting up, still tried to improve the roster and the holes that we know they have, and we think Langdon will try to address this postseason. And yeah, just to answer Michael Dompier's question, at least in my plan, we were operating over the cap. I think you honestly pretty much have to at this point. But that said, like, if you will talk about the non-taxpayer mid-level, like, which caps you at the first apron. So over the cap, but under the first apron, I believe yours will probably be the same as well.
Yeah. I mean, that non-taxpayer MLE it's a big tool, right, that the Pistons have in their tool chest right now. But it does cap it hard caps you at the first apron. So if you're not a cap expert, really all that means is there are actually two cap limits for NBA teams. There's this first apron that comes with not many repercussions as a tax-paying team. And then there's the second apron where once you go over the first apron, you're now into the second apron level. And now we have a couple of constraints that you're going to have to deal with. You start to eventually lose some second round picks. You cannot aggregate multiple players into a trade. They make your life pretty difficult if you're going to be that expensive of a team. Of course, you can get there, right? But it makes things a little bit harder. So like the Thunder this offseason are probably going to try to avoid going down that route. But the point being, you don't have that space to access, right? So if you're going to sign Jalen Duren to a big extension, you're going to bring back Tobias Harris, and you want to say, hey, maybe, if you're a fan, you want to do a big move, right? Bring in a really high salary player. You're going to have to start operating as a second level apron team, and that's going to get very difficult very quickly. The counter to this is once you use that non-taxpayer mid-level exception, which is about $15 million on average in salary. Now you can't actually get up to that level of salary. So you actually have to operate with less cash on the books. So kind of a trade-off, right, that you got there. But go ahead.
Yeah, so I can just start with the guys who you need to make roster decisions on. We already talked about Tobias Harris, and we're both bringing him back. But what I did just to open it up, and I'll talk about the other free agents as well, but re-sign Tobias on a 2-year, $31.2 million deal. So $15 million in the first year. Maybe that number is a little high at this stage of his career, but I think he will have some real suitors on the trademark or the free agent market. And if you go to that price at just 2 years, I think maybe that makes him happy enough to come back. I think he wants to be back. I think that's a good deal for both sides. So a little bit of a decrease from his like $26 million salary that he was on. I don't think he expects to get anything close to that, but that was where I was at with Tobias. I think I think it'll make sense for both sides to try and come to some sort of deal. I think my number is a little high, but I think it could be realistic, and that's still an affordable contract.
All right, so I love the idea of bringing Tobias Harris back. Obviously, Langdon said that was going to be a priority for them. I think it makes sense, right? Tobias Harris, big-time veteran leader for this team. I would love to be able to move him to the bench, but I think my question before we even get to any of that would be 15 mil on an average salary. That's just the mid-level exception for a non-tax-paying team. It's right about where that is. So I almost wondered, like if he's going to get interest from other teams in free agency, other teams are also going to have access to the mid-level exception. And to be clear, you're not using the mid-level exception to sign him to this deal, but that's roughly the amount that he could get from someone else is kind of my point. So do you think that the number, could it even go slightly higher? Do you think like maybe like $17 million in average annual salary just to beat out his other options, but still be fairly cheap? Do you think that could be in the cards?
I think it could, and I think if that's the route, it could even benefit the Pistons in the sense of like maybe if it's a 2-year deal, you partially guarantee the second year, keep some flexibility or put a team option on it. I think with where Tobias is right now, like obviously he doesn't want to put a team option out there, but if it gets him some additional salary in the first year, like that would be the reason I could see the salary being a little bit higher than expected.
All right, love it. So other possible re-signings, obviously Jalen Duren, but Javonte Green's a free agent, Wendell Moore Jr. technically a free agent, and then Kevin Huerter as well. What are you doing with those guys?
So I renounced both Kevin Huerter and Wendell Moore Jr., and I'm bringing Javonte Green back on a 1-year, $3.3 million deal. So pretty similar to this year. A little bit more than he made this year, which you have to with his non-bird rights. And I know the Kevin Huerter piece is a little concerning with, I guess, the spacing and just adding some shooting. I'll go into how I'm addressing that further, but of those four names, I guess if you loop in Tobias, I mean, I think Tobias and Javonte Green were the most important pieces to this team. I think if Javonte Green gets more money elsewhere, you can probably fill in the gaps with another name, whether it's via trade or free agent market. But I think it would be worthwhile for both Green and the Pistons to come to a new deal that's obviously a smaller one.
I'd be a big fan of bringing back Javonte Green as well. I think, next year, if he is back, you're looking at hopefully a reduced role for him, but that role being reduced because Ron Holland takes a little bit more of a step. I mean, if you're looking for like injury relief at that small forward position, if Asar Thompson goes down for any period, Ron Holland goes down for any period, I don't know how, like, you can't do better than what we've seen out of Javonte Green last year. If he can play at that same level in a pinch when they need it, I think that's perfect, especially at such a cheap deal, right? I'm all for it. I love bringing back Javonte Green.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's where I think you can finagle that depending on what you want to do. But those two, I would be inclined to bring back Javonte Green. And yeah, Michael's comment about not renouncing Herder and using his salary in a trade is definitely doable as well. So we'll see he's the interesting one. I feel like it could go either way with him. Obviously, it's not, if it's a new deal to stay in Detroit, it's not going to be close to what he currently makes. So we'll see what happens there. Okay. And we already mentioned we're both extending Asar Thompson and Jalen Duren. So I have a couple trades and a couple signings. Do you have a preference which I go through first?
No preference on what you go through first. Real quick, Richard asks if Kevin Herter is a unrestricted free agent. He is. So what Michael's mentioning is the cap hold, right? You can maintain the cap hold on the books, and that can help you operate as an over the cap team. And then even potentially allow you to do some sign and trade stuff with Kevin Herter, kind of like what they did with Dennis Schroeder last year. If you renounce his rights, you lose that cap hold, which is great for cap space purposes, but you do not really have that ability to do sign and trades or anything like that anymore. All right, go ahead.
All right, so I think I'm going to go through Okay. I was going to say I'm going to go through the signings first, but the biggest move that I've made is from the signings. So I'm going to go with the trades first, and then the trades will make a little bit more sense when I talk about the signings. Okay, so my first trade, this is a very small one, and it's the Pistons helping out the Thunder, who are going to try to avoid the second apron, decrease their tax bill. They have a lot of decisions to make. So how the Pistons could help them is, at least what I did, there's a bigger trade that they can make. But what I did was I sent out Tolu Smith and a couple second round picks. And the reason why they would do that is Tolu's salary isn't guaranteed next year. So the Thunder could just clear that. And in exchange for Tolu and 2 second round picks, the Pistons bring back Thomas Sorber, who was the 15th pick in the last year in last year's draft. He missed all season with a torn ACL. Just like a flyer, I think is interesting for the Pistons. And my roster plans still include, we've already talked about Duren, Isaiah Stewart, Paul Reed still on the roster, but I think Sorber is a guy who could bring some size at the end of the bench. I mean, maybe you don't necessarily need it, but I think it's an interesting flyer that maybe the Pistons could get a little bit of a discount, and the Thunder won't be upset about bringing in a couple draft picks to help them move off some salary. I think Nikola Topic is another name to watch for them if you want to address the ball handling with that. But I went with Sorber because I addressed ball handling and scoring in a different way. So that's my first very small trade. Any thoughts before I go into the next one?
I love it. Actually, I think that, it's kind of, I don't want to say it's weird for the Pistons where they're at 60 wins, just got outed in a game 7 in the conference semifinals. Like, kind of weird to have them taking a flyer, but he's a front court player. He's got some good size to him. I like the idea of seeing what that number 15 overall pick could be in what is effectively his rookie year. I do like the idea of Topic as well, just since you brought that up for the record. I think either of those guys will be fun as just kind of a buy low, see what's what, right? See how they work. I'd be all for it.
Cool. So yeah, obviously, and Sorber is on a rookie deal, so if it doesn't work out, it's not the end of the world. The Pistons aren't giving up anything consequential. So that's how I justified it as I was going through it. My second trade, and this one will make a lot more sense when I go through the free agent signings, but where I put myself with a couple I guess over just bringing back Tobias as well. I put myself pretty close to the first apron. I wasn't over it. So this trade was really to give myself some breathing room, get under the tax. I don't think Tom Gores will really be opposed to being it, like having a luxury tax bill, but obviously if you can get around it, that helps. So my trade was with the Brooklyn Nets, who are pretty much just the salary cap dumping ground this offseason. So I sent them Marcus Sasser and Karis LeVert's $14.8 million expiring contract and a couple picks for taking Karis LeVert's salary. I think it helps the Nets because it turns into an expiring deal, but maybe you have to add 1 or 2 second round picks to get it done. But bringing back Noah Clowney, who is another little bit of a flyer, but he was really good for the Nets this year as they went through their roster just overhaul. He averaged like 12 points a game. I don't think he would be in the rotation if the Pistons trade for him, but I think he's another depth piece that is still young, provide some scoring. And also what this trade would do would generate another traded player exception for Karis LeVert, about $14.6 million, which would help as well. I think the question is if the Nets would do it, but I don't think they'd be opposed to bringing in Karis LeVert as like a veteran presence overall. And obviously it's a bit of a reunion for him. So I just thought it was another interesting piece to add toward the end of the bench that, like Robbie said, brings in a bit of a stretch for that could help you. And maybe he grows into a real bench piece that you can retain for a few years.
I'm all for it. I like both of these. Clowney too. I like the style he plays with. I like the aggression that he has. I think it fits well with what the Pistons are trying to do. He's a high effort, high energy player. So yeah, and like Robbie mentions, gets a little bit of a jumper in there. I don't know with you. I don't know if he cracks the rotation right away, but there's definitely a lot of potential there. I liked him a lot in that draft as well. So all for it. 2 good little buy low moves, Blake. I like it.
Yeah, and so the second one was really I also needed to create roster space after a couple signings too. So for my signings, how about a little Tim Hardaway Jr. reunion at like a 1-year deal, $3.8 million. He had a great year in Denver. You mentioned, I mean, Denver would want to bring him back because they need some depth. And at 34 years old, I mean, Tim Hardaway isn't going to get a huge contract by any means, but renouncing Herter had to add some spacing. I still have another move for that, but I don't know. I think a Tim Hardaway Jr. reunion could help this, obviously, in the regular season and in the playoffs too.
Blake, that's not the guard from last year's team that the fans wanted you to make a reunion with. That would have been Malik Beasley.
Oh yeah,
no, I like it. He really did. He played. Tim Hardaway Jr. had a heck of a year for Denver. I think that would be. I'd love to see Timmy back. I'd be a big fan of that one.
Yeah, he shot over, I mean, close to 41% from three on like 7 attempts per game. He had he was a starter in Detroit, so it was a different role, but he scored more, he shot better. I mean, I think it would just be a good move for hopefully an affordable way to address some of the spacing and just add more shooting. And then, so my big move to round us out was using the full non-taxpayer MLE on Norman Powell for a 3-year deal, $38.1 million. So that's the full non-taxpayer MLE in the first year, which is $12.1 million. I think it's fair to question whether Powell will get more than that. Maybe his age helps fit in there a little bit, and maybe he gets more money elsewhere, but I justified it because even if it's not Norman Powell, I think there are some other names that you can fit in that, whether it's Kobe White, Ayo Dosunmu, Anthony Simons. So I think Powell is at the highest end of that, but he'd certainly bring you the scoring. And I think he would probably want to go to a contender at this point of his career too. So maybe he makes something work. So maybe a little, I'm hoping he takes a discount here, but I think he would be a great fit to address some of the current issues.
He would. I mean, he would be a fantastic fit. Norman Powell. He's on one of the short. He's kind of a short list of players that could come in and not just fill a need that the Pistons have for a little bit more ball handling, a little bit more scoring, right? But he's not a terrible defender. He's a good effort player. He's still a very good athlete, even at his age. Like, I think the fits really well, really solid. The question's kind of like you brought up, right? Like, I think not only, okay, maybe he's looking to be on a contender. Maybe the Miami Heat are going to make a play for Giannis, so that's possible. But couldn't the Heat also pay him a little more, right? I think they would have his early bird rights, wouldn't they?
Yeah, and we're talking about a guy who just is coming off his first All-Star appearance at 32 years old. He scored 21.7 points a game this year for Miami, mostly as a starter. Like, he's coming off a career season, so I think it's definitely a little bit of optimism that he could agree to a deal like that. But I think his age might help that a little bit. So I think it's possible, maybe a little unlikely, but I would love to see it if it could happen.
Yeah, I would be a big fan if that were to happen. I would be all for it. I mean, again, like, maybe that's a sign and trade potential, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, if Norm really wants to come to Detroit, you could do, the Heat could maybe do him a solid, let him get a little bit bigger of a deal. And then I don't know what you'd give up if you're Detroit to make that happen, but I maybe that's more of the route, but either way, like, Norman Powell, in terms of his fit in Detroit, it's pretty picture perfect. He slides right into that number two, that second position. He's a great scorer, like you said, but he's a good off ball player. So you could play him off Cade. You could play him off some Jalen Duren high post plays as well. Good shooter. I mean, it would be pretty perfect fit. So I think that's it, right? Or do you have other moves? Okay, so what's your rotation looking like?
That is it. So that would leave my starting lineup as Cade Duren, Duncan Robinson, Norman Powell, and Asar. I think the issue with that is obviously Tobias Harris goes to the bench. Maybe you can still start him here and there because we are bringing him back. But like, I think that will bring the additional spacing, certainly the additional scoring around Cade Cunningham. It brings some questions on defense, but with the season Asar Thompson had, and I mean, Jalen Duren has his issues, but hopefully he'll take some sort of a step as a defender as well. It might put a little bit too much pressure on Cade as a defender, but I think if that's how the roster shakes out, you at least have to try that starting group of Cade, Duren, Duncan, Powell, and Asar. So that would leave my bench, just my second unit, as Tobias, Stu, Ron Holland, Dennis, and Tim Hardaway Jr. Paul Reed's still in the mix. I'm sure he'll get some minutes. We're bringing back Javonte Green, so him as well. There was some talk about the draft pick as well, so he would be on this roster, and his role, and I mean, who that guy is unknown right now. So I think it still leaves you in a good spot in terms of addressing some of the holes that you need to address. And yeah, like Robbie said, maybe you could even start Powell over Duncan. But I think it, in a boring way, it addresses some of the holes while not giving up to really much of anything. Like, I didn't trade Ron Holland, I didn't trade Isaiah Stewart. So I think the roster could take a step if it looks like that, even though it is it's not crazy different.
I really like the increase of the scoring punch. Like, I think that just as a product of what we were trying to do with this exercise, right? Like, they're re-signing their guys. They're bringing back Tobias Harris. They're pretty much, that means they're banking on internal improvement, right? You're banking on Cade being able to improve around the margins just a little bit more. You're banking on Jalen Duren to, take the playoffs as a learning experience, be better off for it, be that a little bit more self-creation off the bounce, maybe a mid-range jump or something like that. You're banking on Asar Thompson taking a step forward, maybe as a finisher or a ball handler offensively, right? Like, that's where the main growth is going to come from. So I think when that's where your focus is, you're kind of looking to augment the guys around those three as best as you can. And I think you did a nice job with that, honestly, because with Norman Powell coming in, that's a significant step up over Tobias Harris, right, as the third scoring option. Because I think that is ultimately where he would shake out. You're still going to prioritize Jalen Duren and the offense that he can get and he can generate for you. But what Norman Powell allows you to do is, instead of, if Cade has an off night and you're looking for your third guy to step up and it's Tobias Harris's 13 points per game, setting aside what he did in the playoffs, Norman Powell's 18 to 20 points per game is a much better position, right? You look at that guy, you go, yeah, he could go for 30 or 40 on any given night, even if Cade is off. Whereas with Tobias, you're like, yeah, he could get us like 25 on a good night, but you wouldn't expect too much more than that. Even in the playoffs, I think he eclipsed 30 one time. And that was him being the second option because JD was really struggling. So I think that you've upped both the floor and ceiling of the group. I do think I'd probably lean where Robbie mentioned. So starting Powell over Duncan. I'd be a little worried about Powell and Duncan both just getting overpowered if you're asking them to try to check a forward. And Tobias, I mean, he'll be age 34 season, I believe, but he showed he's still got the crafty post game. The shot hasn't totally left him yet. I think that could be a good situation for him to kind of take a step back even further, even if it's not off the bench. The other wild card there is what's Ron Holland, right?
Yep.
Like, could Ron Holland take a big leap as a 3-point shooter and then supplant Tobias Harris in that starting group? Maybe. I think honestly, you're probably crossing your fingers and hoping for it. Just, given that you in this offseason plan focus more on the backcourt rotation than the front court, but it's in the cards. I wouldn't say it's a 0% chance that kind of thing could happen. I'd say, I'm not banking on it. I'd say Tobias is probably likely to start, right? But it's there. It's in the cards.
Yeah, and I mean, hey, bringing in Noah Clowney puts a little position battle with Ron Holland too. So maybe put a little fire under him. I mean, I think he'll improve. Like, Ron Holland's still only 20 years old. There's no reason to believe he's anything close to a finished product. So yeah, I think that's your goal, and that it opens up a spot for Ron Holland to take in the starting lineup if he can grow to that. Yeah, like Richard said, it would leave kind of a small lineup, but I think it might be a trade-off you have to make to add some scoring just because there aren't many affordable like forwards who can dribble, pass, shoot on the market that you won't have to pay a ton for or give up a lot for. So we'll see. I mean, I was a fan of it, definitely explored some bigger things like a Cam Johnson trade with the Nuggets or something like that. But I think this is a way that the Pistons could still improve while maintaining a bit of flexibility as well.
Just as a quick aside, I mean, Richard brings up what is Ron Holland. That's the huge factor for this team over the next couple of years. Completely agree. And I'll just say, like, to that, I think it's almost a selling point to the plan you just laid out that Ron would have a shot, right, at snagging a starting spot. Because like I get that he's still really raw, but he's a 3-point jumper and some, slimming down of the mental lapses off the ball defensively away from being a starting caliber NBA player. I don't want to like just hand wave that away because those are two serious things that he's got to clean up, but they're not unfixable, right? Like you mentioned, he's 20 years old. The defensive lapses, the mental stuff, that's going to go away over time, you think. And I don't think he's as far away as a jump shooter as maybe the percentages would suggest. So like, if he could get up to a league average and he cleans up some of that mental stuff, like I could definitely see it. Even as soon as next year, which would be really great for the team in the long term. So I think I'd give that. So that I'm trying to think of a grade.
Yeah.
And like the hard part is obviously I think both of us, like, we would like to do more, right? We would like the Pistons to make a little bit larger of a move. But given that we've come at this by saying they're not going to do that, I think I want to give it like a solid B plus. Like you up the scoring potential there with Norm Powell. I love bringing back Tim Hardaway Jr. I love the flyers on the younger players, even though like Sorber, Clowney, do they crack the rotation? I don't know, maybe. But like if they do, that's a huge win for the team. And they're on team control deals for another couple of years. Like I think the upside here is really solid. And the only quibble I have would be like I would personally like to figure out a way to get Tobias to the bench, like to manufacture that happening. But at the same time, you give Ron Holland the opportunity. So that's like it's a B plus to me. I think it's really solid.
Hey, I'll certainly take it.
All right. Well, let's just keep going with this. I think we're gonna make this our whole episode. So we'll try at the end to get into a couple of really, really quick pre-submitted questions, and otherwise push those over to next week. Apologies to our voicemail callers. We're probably gonna have to kick this another week as well, or at least with some of them. But let's go over my version of this. I titled this the sleepy offseason plan because I think it's very boring. I did make a trade, but they're not as fun. It's not as fun of a trade as like getting a young flyer from OKC, the talent eye of Sam Presti. You're bringing that guy in, right? Like that's a little bit more exciting. But I'll just start off. I started off the same way that you did. I renounced Wendell Moore Jr. and Kevin Huerter. I just cleared their salaries off the books to give them a little bit of space here. So Tobias Harris, similar. I only wanted to do a 2-year deal. I said it was about a $34-ish million contract. So you're at about $17 million in the average annual value. What would you think about that? Like, is that an overpay? You went 15.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's similar. So I would not be mad at it at all, especially if we think he's going to have the suitors on the open market that we think he will. So yeah, I wouldn't scoff at that at all.
All right, sweet. I also chose to bring back Javonte Green on a veteran minimum contract. Jalen Duren, as we mentioned, gets his new deal. I just said that was going to be 5 years for 200. So yeah, $40 million in the average annual value.
I didn't mention the numbers for Duren or Sarr, but we were in a pretty similar spot. For Duren, I did a 5-year extension for $191.4 million. So definitely a little bit less.
Yep.
Yep, I'm sure Duren will want more, but I think that range is about right.
Yeah, I stand by. I think my expectation is 190 to 210. I think that's where he's going to fall. That's not a huge range, but that's kind of the point, right? Like they're going to be haggling over roughly $2-ish million in average annual value. That's really where the negotiation is going to be. The Pistons are going to want to steal some of that back. Jalen Duren's going to want to maximize some of it. I could see it getting up to like 42, 43. I could see it being down near the 38 or so that 190-ish range would get him to. So, all right, let's oh, do I want to do the signing or the trade first? Technically, they're both signings, but one of them's a sign and trade. I'll do the less exciting one. Colin Sexton, 2-year deal, non-taxpayer mid-level exception. So about $15 million in average annual value. What would you think about bringing Colin Sexton into Detroit? He's currently with the Chicago Bulls.
Yeah, I'd like it. I think it is similar to what I mentioned with Powell. And like I said, Powell is probably the highest tier of player that you can get with that. And I think Sexton's in the group of names with like Kobe White, Anthony Simons that you could bring in to address some scoring. I mean, average 15 points in full last season when he was traded to Chicago. I know a totally different situation, but 17 and a half points a night. He shot 41% from three from there. So I think it's definitely, and he's much younger, obviously. So I think that it's certainly another strong name that you could bring in to address some of the offensive issues that we saw in the postseason.
Yeah, and just to pitch the guy a little bit more, I mean, to be completely candid, Colin Sexton's a guy, actually both of these players are guys I have individually enjoyed watching for quite a few years now. I've liked Colin Sexton all the way back to his time at Alabama, but he's a fun watch. He's efficient. So that's the thing. Colin Sexton's a very efficient scorer. He's undersized. He's only 6'1". They list him at 6'2". I think that's generous, maybe taking into account his afro. So he's a small player. He's not really a playmaker for others. I mean, he can make the simple passes, right? He's not an unwilling passer. He's not the most willing passer either. Like this is very much a score first kind of guy. But you mentioned the 3-point shot. He's a great 3-point shooter at high volume. He's a very good finisher around the rim, and he drives to the rim often, so he generates a lot of free throw attempts as well. So for a guy his size in that kind of small package, he is a fantastic and efficient value as an offensive player. He's not a very good defender. Colin Sexton's kind of funny because he gets this reputation of being a good defender because he is a pit bull out there. He has a ton of energy, right? As a defensive player, he's slapping the floor. He's up underneath guys. He's hand checking all the time. He's reaching for steals. He does generate a decent number of steals, but fundamentally he's not all that sound. But I love the mentality, and I think it would actually fit pretty well here in Detroit. You've got the JB Bickerstaff connection from when they were both in Cleveland for that little bit of time. With Colin Sexton, I think you bring him off the bench. You figure he's your backup point guard, maybe backup shooting guard. I don't know, but he could play either position. And I think if you funnel that defensive energy with solid defenders around him, thinking like a Ron Holland, like an Isaiah Stewart, I think that he wouldn't be as much of a negative on that end of the floor as he has been for other teams in the past. I think he's that kind of defender to me, where if you could put him in the right context, the effort that he plays with is going to carry him quite a ways. Like we saw Duncan Robinson just play with some high level effort in the playoffs defensively, and he didn't get played off the floor as he had been in the past. So I think the Pistons defensive system, their scheme, their context, it helps out guys who aren't fantastic defenders. And you already know that Sexton's going to bring the amount of energy required to maybe be passable. So I think that there's actually a decent amount of upside with this one. I wouldn't want him to come in and supplant like a Duncan Robinson for the starting gig next to Cade. I think that you're signing him exclusively as a backup, but I love the idea of getting that kind of firepower off the bench behind Cade Cunningham.
Yeah, I like especially what you said about playing next to like a Ron Holland and Isaiah Stewart. It sort of increases his floor by a product of who he's playing next to. And I mean, we saw him play on a Charlotte team who they have some good defenders, but a team that's going to go out and beat you scoring wise. So yeah, I think that would be the only concern with Sexton is what he would bring defensively, but I don't think it's an issue coming into this team specifically because of how much of their identity that is. And I think he'd really fit well into that.
All right. So my other move, I only made one other roster move. And I will admit that this one is probably, I don't want to say it's the most of a stretch because I could see this.
Wes might have froze here, so we'll give him a second to come back.
This happening.
You're good.
Is it back?
Yes.
I'm good. All right. Gosh darn, I'm having computer issues this morning, guys. I'm sorry. So I only made one other move. This one, I'm going to say it's kind of a stretch, not because I don't think that it can't happen. I could see the Pistons wanting to make a move like this, but the type of player is it's not an archetype that the team has prioritized in the past. So that's my context. That's what I'll say. Rui Hachimura, I targeted on a sign and trade with the Los Angeles Lakers. The Lakers are a very expensive roster right now, and they have a ton of free agents that are very important to them that they need to bring back. Looking at Austin Reeves, who's certainly going to decline his player option in order to get a larger contract. Looking at LeBron James, a star member of their core, right? I think DeAndre Ayton has a player option. Is he going to accept that? Is he going to want a little bit more money? It's very reasonable right now. It's like $8 million. Might he want more? I don't know. And Rui Hachimura is a unrestricted free agent for them. So Rui this past year earned about $18 million, and he played really well. Okay, if you look at his numbers, it's probably a little surprising given his reputation when he was with the Washington Wizards. But for a couple of years now, he has been a fantastic catch-and-shoot three-point shooter at a high volume. He's a very efficient offensive player, and he's a very physical offensive player. He can even do a little bit off the bounce, so he's pretty versatile. He's been willingly sitting back in a little bit smaller of an offensive role just because of the guys that he was around, okay? I do not know why Rui Hachimura would take a discount from the Lakers or from anybody else. Okay, I get that you're looking at him as a mid-level exception kind of guy, but that's a decrease in salary for a guy that just had a really, really solid year and an even better playoffs. He was fantastic in the playoffs, shot over 50% from three in the playoffs at high volume. He averaged like 18 points a game for the Lakers in the playoffs. That's the guy that you're going to say is taking a contract discount? I don't think so. I don't think so at all. But I don't think that the Lakers are going to be able to afford to keep him, right? If you're looking at he was just making 18, you figure he wants a little bit more than that. I don't think the Lakers can afford to spend $20 million in average annual value on a guy like Rui Hachimura that, frankly, was just a solid role player in their system. So the upside for the Pistons is, I think with Rui, he has enough history offensively to suggest if you up his volume, there might still be some more scoring available. He's really expanded his game as a three-point shooter since he joined the Lakers. And in the past, in international play with the Wizards, he's always flashed this physical ball handling, self-creation ability. And he's just not been asked to do that these past couple of years. I think in Detroit, he would. So you're looking at, this is the guy that I'm bringing in to push Tobias Harris to the bench. And I think that it's possible that as a third scoring option, Rui Hachimura could be at that like 15 to 17 points per game. I could see it happening. He's a good off-ball player, and I think that there's some untapped skill there offensively with the ball in his hands. All this is to say, I had a sign and trade deal go through. He's going to get 3 years for $60 million. So a 3-year contract for 28-year-old Rui Hachimura, $20 million in average annual value. And in order to get that done, it needs to be a sign and trade. So for the Lakers, I am sending them back Karis LeVert and Marcus Sasser, which almost perfectly matches the value of Rui's new contract. So the Pistons would be able to make that signing work under the just into space. So what my pitch for the Lakers, the only guards that they have under contract next year are Dalton Connect, Nick Smith Jr., Bronny James, and Adu Thiero. That's it. You know that they're going to want to pay Austin Reeves, but in paying Austin Reeves and paying LeBron James, they just need cheap guards that can come in and play. Karis LeVert is a fairly cheap guard who can come in and give them solid minutes off the bench. I think that Marcus Sasser is a guy they might be interested
I think we might have lost you again.
Yep, we did. I think I'm back. Am I back?
Yes.
Sorry. Anyway, so I think that for the Lakers, right, you've got Karis LeVert. He can come in. He's cheap, and he can give them solid minutes. He's a okay enough two-way player. He can come off the bench. He'd be solid for them. And Marcus Sasser, he's got a little bit of upside still, right? He's showed some scoring flashes, shown some defensive flashes. I think that that's something that they might be interested in. So from their perspective, they're going to lose a guy that they can't really afford to keep anyway, and they're going to fill two pretty important roles off the bench for them with their guards in Karis LeVert and Marcus Sasser. From the Pistons' perspective, you're getting a guy who, at least offensively, I think is an upgrade over Tobias Harris. Defensively, not as much. But I think that, again, very similar to Colin Sexton, I love the mentality that Rui Hachimura plays with. He's very intense, high energy, fairly high IQ, fairly good feel as a basketball player. I think he fits in with the team culture here very well. And I wouldn't be surprised if you get him in the context, again, of, next to Asar Thompson, playing a little bit with Isaiah Stewart. Jalen Duren's not a terrible defensive big. He's all right. Right. I think he's probably comparable, or if not slightly better than a DeAndre Ayton. Like, I think that you could see Rui Hachimura kind of take a step up to being just poor, not really bad under this scheme and this system. So I like it. But what would you think about Rui Hachimura in Detroit here?
Yeah, I mean, I think what he did over the playoffs was incredible. He shot at 56.9% from three on 5.8 attempts per game over 10 games. So a small sample size, but not drastically small. And like Robbie mentioned here in the chat, like the Pistons need forwards that want to shoot the long ball, and Rui's a guy that'll do that a bit. I don't want to put everything on one game, but a big issue in Game 7 was Tobias had an off night. The Pistons didn't have a bucket from their starting forwards until Asar Thompson made a corner three just before halftime. So I think Rui will, he wouldn't let that happen. I think you're definitely asking for him to fill a bigger role. His career high is it looks like it's 13.8 points per game his second year in Washington. And then his first full year with the Lakers, he put up 13.6. So I think if you're asking him to up that to about 15, I think it's definitely reasonable. I think I think it's a great fit overall. I think the only question, I guess, would be is like you mentioned, it would push Tobias Harris to the bench, which I think is a great plan at this stage. And like Michael mentioned here, what is there a domino effect for Ron Holland? I think it could help in terms of not putting too much pressure on Ron Holland, but could this move be a domino effect of eventually, if Ron Holland doesn't take a step that we hope he takes, does he fall out of the rotation? Does the front office look to look to trade him by any means. But I think at this point, when you're trying to compete, you're trying to get to the Eastern Conference Finals and the NBA Finals. Like you need players like Rui Hachimura, and I'm with you. I don't think he'll take a discount to sign with the Lakers because, yeah, they have the best scorer in the NBA, but the roster needs a lot of work to compete in the West. So I think he might be a little bit enticed to come here as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think with the scoring thing with him, like, he's a willing shooter, he's a willing scorer, he's a very aggressive offensive player. You're kind of banking on volume, right? When he got to LA, he became a far more efficient scorer. So you're figuring, okay, like if we could take him from 10 shots a night to like 13, what does that get him, right? Could that get him from 13 points a night to like 16? Possible. I could see it as long as the percentages hold up. And maybe he's just not that guy. And that would be fine. If he's not that guy, you're essentially you've got a younger version of the Tobias Harris you had last year. So that's not the end of the world. So Richard asks, how is his defense? Not good. His defense is not good. I would argue it's not worse than Tobias Harris in the context that we saw Tobias Harris last year. They have a lot of the same physical tools. They actually they're very reminiscent of one another as players. Tobias is a little more reliant on the mid-range than Hachimura is. He's more reliant on the three. But, I think in terms of the tool set they have athletically, it's pretty similar. So you're hoping that he can come to Detroit and take a step to just being below average as a defender. John Collins, Richard asked about John Collins. That's another name I thought about. The thing with John Collins is he's very much just an off-ball player. I lean to Rui only because I think that he can make something happen with the ball in his hands, and I just don't have that same opinion of John Collins. So I think in Detroit you're looking for, or at least I was looking for, my hope was, all right, we're going to do a sleepy offseason. We're going to do a boring offseason. So who can I get to come in here into the forward position and overachieve? I think Rui Hachimura is a guy who could come in and he could overachieve. He could be your surprise, like, hey, he just had a career year, 17 points per night, 6 rebounds, was really efficient. And it's because, in Detroit, he was asked to score quite a bit, but he still wasn't the focus, right? That focus was still Cade, still Jalen Durham. So here's my rotation, Blake. So I've got at the point guard spot, Cade, Colin Sexton, and let's just say their 21st overall pick. I'm going to say Jenkins starts. I want the ball handling out there, and I want the defense. I think that frees having Jenkins out there frees Cade up to move a little bit as well. Like if the other team has a good guard who's fairly small, you could put Danis Jenkins on him and not lose sleep over it. So on a night like that, you could actually get Cade to be hidden defensively and give him a break on that side of the ball, which the Pistons couldn't always do this year. So I think that's a win. But it could be Duncan Robinson. Either way, the two spots, it's Jenkins, Robinson, and Lanier. I think your forward spots are really fun for me, actually. I think the group of four of Asar Thompson, Rui Hachimura being backed up by Ron Holland and Tobias Harris, that's fun. That's solid. Like as a counterpoint to maybe you need to move someone to get Holland some minutes. That group of four could be really fun. And that's 48 minutes of really solid wing and forward play, in my opinion. Are you in the same boat?
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, like Asar and Rui are definitely going to make up the majority of those minutes, but maybe Holland works his way into more minutes somehow. And obviously over the course of the season, like everyone isn't available for every game. So it leaves some opportunity on the table there, and like a lot, probably like a lower pressure environment for Ron Holland than like compared to the situation that I laid out as well.
Yeah. And so, to wrap it up, the center position I left as is. You still got JD, Isaiah Stewart, Paul Reed, and Tolu Smith as your kind of injury relief guy, very, at the end of the bench there. So, I mean, like in terms of how the rotation filled out, I'm fairly happy with it. You added a little bit more ball handling in Colin Sexton, and by moving Danis Jenkins out to that starting lineup, bringing in Rui Hachimura has some upside certainly helps the floor spacing quite a bit. He's, if nothing else, a much better 3-point shooter than Tobias Harris, but maybe there's a little bit of scoring upside there too, which could help out the trio of Cade, Asar, and Duren. Otherwise, I mean, it is kind of a run it back, right? Technically, I found 2 new starters, but that's only because I'm projecting Danis to be able to take it away from Duncan, and I didn't put anything in Danis's way for that. So where would you be if this were the rotation for Detroit? And then how would you grade this kind of sleepy, boring offseason?
Yeah, I mean, I think it leaves some flexibility too in terms of the starting lineup. Like, you think Danis can grow into that, which he certainly can. And yeah, Ben brings up Kobe Brown. I like that name as well, depending on how things go. If you can't get one of those guys, I think he's a good name to keep in the back of our minds. But yeah, I'd give it a solid A-, just to one up you a bit. And the only reason I do that isn't necessarily to how the roster filled out, because I think it filled out pretty nicely. But I think the guard spot, like, Rui is there to score. But what if he gives you closer to that, like 10 to 12 points a game? I think he'd be higher. Like, if that's where it is, it puts a lot of pressure on the hands of Danis Jenkins. And if you need more of a scoring punch, maybe do you bring Sexton in the starting lineup next to Cade? And that puts more pressure on Cade defensively, or do you need to put Duncan in there? All that to say, like, it leaves you with a lot of options, which is good. And then you still have like the depth that Javonte Green and Paul Reed bring, plus whoever they bring in with the 21st pick, as long as they don't trade it. So I think it's solid overall in like a different way compared to mine. It addresses the scoring dilemmas, but doesn't give up anything in terms of like size, and is also projecting that your current core pieces are going to grow, which we should certainly have to expect. So I think it's a solid plan overall.
All right, let's kind of wrap up on that. I think this is an interesting question. So Richard asked, do the Pistons, excuse me, need to size up their front court more, even with these moves that we just laid out for my kind of boring offseason plan? They seem like they could be undersized. What do you think on that? Because I've seen some of this going around, floating around online for the Pistons. Like, I know the Cavs have their 2 big lineups. I know that the Spurs have the alien there with Wembanyama. The Knicks have Mitchell Robinson. But at the same time, the Pistons were really the most dominant team in the paint last year with the guys that they had. Is this an issue for them, or is it like a hidden issue, I guess?
It's funny because, like, for years I've thought, how does this team not have a 7-footer? Like, that's something you need to add, whether it's a depth piece. And I mean, I tried to do it a bit with adding Sorber, but he's like about the same height as Jalen Duren. So it's not like you're getting a super tall center in there. I think, like you said, with how good the team was at like defending in the paint and dominating on the offensive glass too, I don't think you really need to. And the only reason I say that is because Asar Thompson just changes everything, honestly, with his versatility. I think it would be nice to have some more height off the bench, but I'm not sure if you necessarily need to. And I think it's fair that like both teams in the finals have one of their stars that's a big man, and that's been a big issue for other teams that haven't made it that far. But I think just the Pistons, with how they can defend, as long as they have the scoring to go alongside it, I think they could make it work. It would be tough if there's like an NBA Finals between the Pistons and the Spurs, but I think they would still give themselves a pretty good shot against whoever they would play in the postseason.
Yeah, I mean, I think, so the Pistons have good positional size on the roster. They just don't have, like you said, that big 7-footer. The one thing that I would say, I do get a little worried about the defense, or not the defense, sorry, about the rebounding. So like in the offseason plan that I had laid out, Rui Hachimura starting at the power forward, very physical player, very aggressive player. Ben brings up that maybe in a context or in a culture that emphasizes defense, he would take a little bit of a leap there. I could see all of that. He's just not been a very good rebounder his entire career, even though he has good size, even though he is a very, very solid, strong positional guy. Like Tobias Harris has never been a fantastic rebounder. We've been for a couple of years now asking Asar Thompson to be a little bit better of a rebounder. Like, and positionally, the only guys that are above average for their position as a rebounder in my book are Cade Cunningham, Danis Jenkins, and Jalen Duren. You'll note that 2 of those are guards. Like, Isaiah Stewart's not the best rebounder around, right? He's a little undersized. He's okay. He's not the best. Jalen Duren's a great rebounder. Paul Reed, Michael brought up bringing in Paul Reed as maybe at the 4 to get some more size, but he's not a great rebounder either. Like, I think that's where we saw a bit of an issue in the playoffs, and it got turned into a size thing. I don't think it's a size problem. I think that the Pistons just don't have a bunch of solid rebounders, and you can fix that with a little bit of a culture of crashing the glass a little bit harder, like the Spurs, right? They were getting all these offensive rebounds in Game 7, even from their guards, and their guards aren't historically like amazing rebounders. So I think that could be possible, just as a point of emphasis, maybe could fix it. But that would be my one concern, I think. Would not necessarily the size, but the rebounding.
Yeah, and hopefully, I mean, Jalen Duren's obviously been great at that. So hopefully that continues as well. And if it's a true problem, then you can probably adjust the rotation a bit to solve for it. Wouldn't be I feel like no matter what plan you have, you're going to have to give something to get something, and hopefully the holes that you leave are ones that you could easily fix and fill. I think both of ours were just trying to address that like scoring punch that the team is lacking, which I think is the biggest priority. And defensively, you're not giving up any of the key guys that contributed to that. So hopefully it's more of the same. But we'll see. Obviously, we're leaving on the table the potential for a big move or something like that, which the team very well could take, or they could leave all their capital in terms of draft picks and young pieces available to leave a little flexibility for the future if they decide they do want to do that.
Yep. And in future episodes, we're going to do just that. So we'll do another episode very much like this, where we're going to do kind of the big swing off-season move. We mentioned at the start, we'll have a draft show that we do to kind of preview that. So plenty of good stuff to come still for the off-season here. What's nice is we don't have a lot of time, right? I mean, the draft, we're starting tomorrow in the month of the draft. And then once you have the draft, it's free agency, it's summer league, everything starts flying really quickly. So hey, it's nice when your basketball team plays deep into the playoffs. You don't have to wait as long for more basketball to come around. Really quick shout out to Dylan22 here as my daughter screams in the background. He says thoughts on targeting John Collins in free agency as a stretch big, and then signing Colin Sexton or Kobe White to the mid-level exception. Dylan, it is not what I did, but you and I were very much in the same frame of mindset, clearly, as I brought in Colin Sexton and then another stretch big option at the 4. So shout out to him for picking exactly what I was going to do. And, this is a mailbag style show, so I feel like we have to at least ask one. What would you think about Cam Johnson? This is from the Beastman 17. Idea of bringing in Cam Johnson. Wait, we already answered this one. Look at that. I mean, we were just on it, Blake. So we had a live question that asked this too. So shout out to Fat Daddy for asking about an underrated and not talked about enough need is a 7-footer who can rebound because they looked small in the playoffs. So we just addred that one retroactively, we're going to say that we were talking about Fat Daddy Fort, which is a hilarious handle, by the way. We were talking about that question. All right, let's end on Cam Johnson. What would you think about targeting him for the Pistons? The Beastman 17 is suggesting trading Duncan Robinson.
Yeah, I tried to make this work, and I mean, Duncan wasn't a name I included, but I think that could be of interest for the Nuggets because partial guarantee, but he could also help them. I mean, I'd like to bring in Cam Johnson. My little issue with him is just his availability. I mean, it increased over the past few years, but he's had issues with injuries over his career. He played 54 games last season, which isn't horrible, but I think if you're making a big move like that, like Langdon has showed his emphasis on guys who are available. That said, I trade for a rookie who missed the whole season with a torn ACL, but overall I tried to keep it to guys who are mostly available. But I think it's a good name to look at. It's probably a deal they could make work, and the Nuggets are probably trying to move off of him. It's just the injury history is my hiccup there.
I was going to echo the exact same thing, so I'll add exactly one more fact to that. This is not just a forward with significant injury history in the lower body. This is a 30-year-old forward that has significant lower body injuries in his past. So I get the archetype. If he were healthy all the time, he'd be a great fit. But, you know, if he were healthy all the time, I don't think that the Nuggets would be looking to move his contract. So I like the idea. I think I just would want to look for a different piece that would fill the same kind of role rather than talk about Cam Johnson, who I find is always shockingly old. He's older than you think. I think he came in as like a fifth-year senior. So very good player. I hope he can stay healthy into the future, but I would be out as well.
Yeah. There's a bunch of different ways that they can go, which is nice. And I mean, I think they'll try to fill it more I think they'd be more keen to bring in someone at like the non-taxpayer mid-level that could potentially address the scoring issues in a better way. Than bring in a guy who's making like 22-25 million a year, but it is an option. That said, Wes, any final thoughts before I close this out?
No, I think this was fun. So like I know we kept saying that these were the boring off seasons, right? The sleepy, the kind of the run it back stuff, but the goal was to try to take what Langdon talked about in his postseason press conference, try to prioritize the things that he seemed to suggest they were going to prioritize, and understand that, yes, all the options are on the table. That's what he was talking about there. But just if you're looking at this practically, right, if you're going to extend a large contract to Jalen Duren, if you're going to try to bring back Tobias Harris, you don't have too many avenues of player acquisition that improve the team and aren't a massive consolidation trade, which maybe that means that they're going to make the massive consolidation trade. But we kind of wanted to figure out if we could cobble together an offseason where they didn't do something that drastic, but still tried to maximize the roster that they had, try to just adjust around the edges to improve the context around Cade, Asar, and Duren, assuming that those are the guys, right? Like that's the trio of players that are going to be the future of this Pistons team. So, I think obviously pat my own back. I think I did fine, but I think both of us did well to do that. I hope you guys all found it at least somewhat interesting, right? That maybe this isn't the home run type of off season, but I think indisputably with both of our plans, the team got better in a couple of key ways and would be well positioned to have similar success this upcoming season as they just did this past season, maybe even take another step forwards as a young team with guys taking steps that young players take. So I don't know. I hope you guys all found it interesting and maybe maybe not as boring as we are jokingly saying that this type of offseason would be. They can still make some interesting moves, even if they don't go trade for a Trey Murphy.
Yeah. And like Robbie said, now we have to do it all in off season. So yeah, we'll definitely do that as well, explore some avenues. And yeah, because this took up basically the whole show, there's some voicemails that we're going to hit next week and some questions we have left on the table. So sorry if we didn't get to those, but we have them in the hopper. So stay tuned for that. And a reminder that anyone can call our number to ask a question, hear your voice on the show. The number for that is 313-355-2717. And special thanks to Sean Corp, the managing editor of Detroit Bad Boys, for supporting the show. And shout out to you guys for all the great questions and talking points tonight. We'll catch you next week, whether on your commute or live with us on YouTube. We can't wait to talk more Detroit basketball with you all.